Today I would like to discuss using annotated bibliographies to help prepare you for writing a dissertation or a doctoral study. Dr. Graham and I have reviewed more annotated bibliographies than we can remember, easily more than 1,000. That experience helped convince us to provide some different guidance on doing annotated bibliographies at the doctoral level. But first, a little bit of background about me and my wife. I was an active management consultant for 35 years, certified by the Institute of Management Consultants, and now with Emeritus and Academic Fellow designation. I completed my DBA at University of Phoenix with a dissertation on leadership following the so-called civil war in Uganda's North region. I've been an adjunct professor at GCU since 2011. Primarily working with DBA, EDD, and Psych doctoral learners, while serving as an instructor in the DBA program. I was a GCU residency instructor for more than 30 residencies until the COVID pandemic helped me reassess my work-life balance. I've been an adjunct contributing doctoral faculty member at Walden University since 2018. Dr. Graham and I actually met at a residency in 2012. Her PhD in education is from Capella, and she has two master's degrees, one in neuropsych, so she is very smart. I can fix businesses, but she can fix people. She's also part-time doctoral faculty at North Central University, now part of National University, in the Sanford College of Education. I do not know if GCU's current residency curriculum includes annotated bibliographies, but I know many of the content courses do. Walden's doctoral programs do include annotated bibliographies with a rubric that provides little guidance on the content of the annotations, but does express the need to synthesize the submitted annotations. In 2018, Dr. Graham and I were driving back to our Savannah area home from our summer home on North Carolina's Outer Banks. I remember it was a Friday, and a hurricane was approaching coastal Georgia. About halfway through South Carolina, I received a text message alerting me that the Savannah airport had closed due to the approaching storm. I was scheduled to fly from Savannah to Phoenix for residency on the following Sunday, so that plan, of course, changed. My teaching partner and I had divided the workload so that I was to review and grade the 20 or so annotated bibliographies that were the first assignment of residency. I posted the grades when I got to Savannah and started reflecting on what I had graded. I realized that the annotations were, in my view, essentially useless as preparation for a dissertation, and Dr. Graham and I started thinking about a better way to do annotated bibliographies for dissertation preparation. I decided I might as well get some value out of reviewing all those annotations. Our research led us to understand that the literature includes discussion of two distinct categories of annotated bibliographies. A summative annotation is, in my view, much like the book reports that some of us used to do in elementary school. The purpose is to demonstrate that you read the source and, frankly, not much else. On the other hand, an evaluative annotation documents information for later use. Evaluative annotations have a purpose beyond demonstrating that you read a source. Those purposes can vary depending on why you are reading the source. So, an annotated bibliography for preparing for your dissertation, for preparing you as an emerging researcher, should include more than what the authors learned, but should also include some detail about how they learned it. In preparing your proposal for your dissertation or doctoral study, you will need to write extensively about how you propose to conduct your study. And the best place to learn about how to do research and how to write about doing research is your collection of articles discussing research that others have conducted related to your topic. This first example is an actual annotation of an article that was submitted for that residency, in fact, in September 2018. Compared to many that we see, it's not bad. It gives the reader an idea of the basic topic or purpose for the published research, the research design, and of course, the findings. The second example is one that Dr. Graham and I created based on the same article. As you can see, it is a little longer. It identifies the methodology as well as the design, the sources of data, the data analysis process or model, and the contribution to the body of knowledge. The annotation also includes potential topics for future research and limitations of the studies, each of which could be potential dissertation topics for an emerging researcher. Each university has a somewhat different outline for a prospectus or a concept paper and for a proposal, whether for a dissertation or a doctoral study. The points identified on this slide are common among most dissertations and doctoral studies. We reviewed hundreds of studies from dozens of universities, and especially when you add the three elements that are for your consideration, these are the key points found in roughly 80% of all dissertations or doctoral studies. Note that a doctoral study generally has a more pragmatic purpose, so the doctoral study does not necessarily seek to add to the academic body of knowledge. But both a doctoral study and a dissertation can have implications for future research and for application. So, when annotating a source, provide a full reference in APA format. Include the DOI number, if any, and if not, the URL for the home page of the journal's website. You will need this for your eventual manuscript anyway, so why put off until tomorrow what you can do right now? Make note of the APA format for in-text and parenthetical citations. Again, you will need this eventually anyway. What problem did the authors explore? Note the authors explored the problem, not the article. The article is what the authors wrote to discuss what they explored. Why is this important in an annotation? It is the context for the author's discussion. What was the theory, model, or concept that the authors used to either guide their study or to make sense of their data? Note that a quantitative study generally has a theoretical foundation because a theory often proposes a relationship between two or more variables or factors, and the quantitative study will seek to explore the extent to which that proposed relationship exists in a specific context. A qualitative study does not test hypotheses regarding the extent of relationships between variables or factors, but may use models or theories or concepts to interpret the data, which may result in a proposal of potential relationships. So quantitative research generally tests theories, and qualitative research explores a phenomenon through a conceptual lens. Why do we suggest that you identify key sources cited by your annotated source? The perhaps obvious reason is that somebody else's key sources may become your key sources as well. If you see numerous articles that each cite the same sources, these might be sources you want to read. Make note of these sources from the annotated sources reference list and add them to your reading list. I presume that you have a reading list. If not, I suggest you get started on one. You might also make note of potentially relevant sources that have cited the source you are annotating. Why? A source that cites your annotated source will, of course, be newer, but it also may have added to the discussion regarding your problem in ways that you will only discover by reading the citing source. Add that potentially relevant source that cited your annotated source to your reading list. Not all empirical articles have a formal review of the literature. It may depend as much on the publication as on the author. Sometimes, however, you can extract themes from the source you are annotating. If you create a list of the themes that emerged in your annotated sources, you may find yourself with a list of themes you should discuss in your own review of the literature. Please remember that you are not the first person to ever do research. You do not need to make everything up about your study from scratch, and you can learn from those who preceded you in research about almost everything that you will want for your manuscript, other than, of course, the answer to your research question. Answering your research question is why you need to do the research. A doctoral study or dissertation is often about making known what is currently not known or not sufficiently understood. What methodology and research design did the authors of the empirical study you are annotating use? Why did they do their study that way and not another? Since you will likely need to explain your choices for your study, you might as well get some experience trying to discern the rationale of published researchers. That is part of critical reading. What research questions do you find in the study? What did the analysis of the collected data need to answer? What was the phenomenon of the study you were annotating? Note that we generally do not discuss a phenomenon in the context of a quantitative study, but that is only because we are testing hypotheses in quantitative research, not strictly exploring a phenomenon as we do in qualitative research. What can you learn from the research questions and phenomenon or hypotheses of one study that may help you craft yours? Who did the study collect data from, and to what population might the findings be generalizable or transferable? Note that in quantitative research, we talk about generalizability, and in qualitative research, we talk about transferability. The distinction is generally the result of non-statistical sampling in qualitative research, resulting in no expectation for sufficient power from the sample size to generalize findings from the sample to the population, as compared with quantitative research, in which you are expected to try to collect data from a large enough sample to generalize. Transferability is, in some respects, generalizability lacking sufficient statistical power, although I would not discuss it that way. So what population, if any, was identified? From what target population did the authors draw their sample? What sample size did they use? How did they identify and select their sample? We might look at random sampling or purposeful sampling, also called purposive sampling, or convenience sampling. Sampling involves explicit criteria, which can be inclusion criteria or exclusion criteria, so you might want to pay attention to identified criteria, since you will eventually need to discuss your criteria for participating in your study. How did the authors collect their data? Did they use one or more named instruments? Might one of those named instruments be potentially useful for your study? Did they use a survey or a questionnaire? How might the survey or questionnaire fit with your study? Did they do interviews or focus groups or use archival data or something else? How might those apply to your study? How did they analyze the data? If quantitative, note that data analysis often begins with testing assumptions about the data, and you might need to know how to do that if you are going to do a quantitative study. For a qualitative study, did they do thematic analysis or content analysis or narrative analysis or something else? You might need to know how to do that same type of qualitative analysis and know how to write about it. The last 3 points to consider are really more useful when you are not locked in on your potential study's topic. Assumptions are presumptions of fact without proof or substantiation. In other words, something that's not yet known. If you think about your study as making known what is not yet known, exploring somebody else's assumptions may be a place to start. Limitations and delimitations are two other areas of proposed weakness to one study that may be an opportunity for somebody else to overcome and study. What was made known is useful because it is not necessarily something you might want to study. But could you study something similar in a different context? Might you replicate a published study? Making note of what emerged unknown is, I hope, a rather obvious source of a potential topic for you to study. Annotated bibliographies are not just about demonstrating to a reader that you read an article or an abstract of an article. Annotated bibliographies can be a tool to help you hone your critical reading skills, which might lead to critical thinking and critical writing. They're also a tool for you to record what you may have learned from published sources that you can use to craft your own study, from the literature review to the design and execution of your study. Learn from those who preceded you in research and build on what they did and how they did it. Do not make the mistake of treating the doctoral journey as a solo experience where you have to learn everything from scratch. These two references are published articles in peer-reviewed journals that Dr. Graham and I authored on the topic of annotated bibliographies. They are similar, but not the same. We encourage you to read each of them. Thank you for your time.